Krell's hover chair hummed softly as it floated at the edge of the massive training field. His lower body hung limp beneath him, thin and underdeveloped, completely useless. The afternoon sun of his home planet beat down on the red sand as he watched his classmates run through combat drills. Again. Like always. Nobody looked at him anymore. He'd been sitting in this same spot for 3 years now, ever since the Valen Military Academy had been forced to accept him under the new galactic inclusion laws. The instructors had found a creative solution to that legal requirement. Sure, he could attend the academy. He could be present for every single class, every drill, every simulation. But actually participate? That was a different story. Cadets, reform the line. Instructor Draven's voice boomed across the field. The tall, muscular Valen warriors snapped into formation, their scaled skin gleaming in the sunlight. They moved with precision and power, everything Krell would never be. A group of cadets jogged past his chair, not even glancing in his direction. He caught fragments of their conversation. Did you see Jean's combat scores? Absolutely perfect. Of course. He's going to graduate top of the class, no question. They disappeared toward the barracks, and Krell was alone again with his thoughts. This was his life. This had always been his life. Born with a genetic disorder that left his legs useless, he'd been written off before he could even walk. Or rather, before he couldn't walk. But here's the thing nobody knew about Krell. While they ignored him, while they treated him like a piece of furniture bolted to the edge of the training ground, he was actually doing something. He was watching. Really watching. Take that last drill, for example. The one where Blue Squadron was supposed to outmaneuver Red Squadron in a simulated canyon battle. Everyone had cheered when Blue won, praising their aggressive tactics and quick reflexes. But Krell had seen something different. He'd seen how Red Squadron's commander had positioned his third unit too far forward, leaving a gap in their defensive line. He'd seen how Blue had accidentally exploited it, not through skill but through dumb luck. If Red's commander had held that position back just 30 seconds longer, Blue would have walked right into a trap. Nobody else noticed. Nobody else cared. But Krell had added it to his mental library, filed away with thousands of other observations. Mistakes, brilliant moves, patterns, weaknesses, strengths. His body might be trapped in this chair, but his mind was free. And it was sharp. The defective one is still here, a voice said behind him. Krell didn't turn. He recognized Instructor Valen's tone. The instructor was talking to someone else, probably another teacher, speaking as if Krell couldn't hear or understand. The law requires accommodation, another voice responded. So we accommodate. He watches. That's enough. Such a waste of a roster slot. We could have a real warrior in his place. They walked away, their conversation fading. Krell's throat sacs fluttered slightly, the Valen equivalent of a sigh. He'd heard variations of this conversation hundreds of times. It should hurt less by now. It didn't. The training field began to empty as evening approached. Soon, he'd return to his small quarters, study the tactical manuals he'd memorized front to back, and prepare for another day of being invisible. Then something unusual happened. A figure approached from the Academy's main building. Small, by Valen standards. Compact. The person moved with a different kind of confidence than the towering warriors around here. As they got closer, Krell realized this wasn't a Valen at all. It was a human. He'd heard rumors that the Academy was participating in some kind of exchange program with Earth, bringing in an instructor from humanity's military. Most cadets had laughed at the news. Humans were tiny compared to Valens. Weak. Slow. What could they possibly teach warriors bred for combat? The human walked directly toward him. Not past him. Not around him. Toward him. She stopped a few feet from his chair and looked at him. Actually looked at him, making eye contact. Krell couldn't remember the last time someone had done that. You're Krell, right? Her voice was accented but clear in the Valen language. Yes, He wasn't sure what else to say. I'm Lieutenant Jessica Hayes. Just got assigned here. She glanced at the now empty training field, then back at him. I've been reviewing student files. Your written tactical exam scores are remarkable. Top 5% of the entire academy. Krell blinked in surprise. Nobody had mentioned his test scores in years. Thank you, Lieutenant. So why are you sitting out here instead of leading training exercises? The question was so direct, so unexpected, that Krell didn't have his usual diplomatic answer ready. Because I can't march. Can't run the obstacle courses. Can't stand in formation or engage in hand-to-hand combat drills. Jessica tilted her head slightly. Can't do those specific things, sure. But can you think? Can you strategize? Can you command? Krell hesitated. Nobody's ever asked me that before. Well, I'm asking. Jessica pulled up a small datapad. I watched today's canyon simulation recordings. You were tracking the movements the whole time, weren't you? I saw your eyes following every unit, every decision. He had been. He always did. Yes, Blue Squadrons win. What did you think? This had to be a test. Some kind of cruel joke. But something in Jessica's expression seemed genuine. Red Squadron's third unit positioned too aggressively. It created a vulnerability in their defensive formation. Blue exploited it, though I don't think their commander realized it was even there. Jessica's face broke into a smile. A real one. Exactly what I saw. Took me 3 reviews to catch it. You got it in real time. She tapped her datapad thoughtfully. Tell me something, Krell. How long have you been sitting here, watching and learning? 3 years, 3 years. She looked out at the training field, then back at him. You know what I think? I think this academy has been wasting everyone's time. Yours most of all. She crouched down, bringing herself to his eye level. How would you like to stop watching and start playing? The next morning, Krell found himself in Admiral Thane's office, hovering awkwardly near the doorway while Lieutenant Jessica Hayes stood at attention before the massive desk. The Admiral was an imposing figure, even by Valen standards. 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales, with 4 eyes that could look in multiple directions at once. Let me understand this correctly, Lieutenant. Thane's voice rumbled like distant thunder. You want to form an experimental tactical unit for the Inter-Academy War Games. And you want this, cadet, to command it. Jessica didn't flinch. Yes, sir. Cadet Krell has demonstrated exceptional tactical analysis abilities. His test scores speak for themselves. His test scores? Thane leaned forward, 2 of his eyes focusing on Krell while the other 2 stayed on Jessica. Lieutenant Hayes, I understand your species has different standards, but here at the Valen Military Academy, we train warriors. Complete warriors. Mind, body, and spirit working as one. With respect, Admiral, that's exactly my point, Jessica said. Earth didn't conquer our planet by being the strongest or the fastest. We were weaker than the predators hunting us, slower than our prey, and more fragile than almost everything else. But we survived and thrived because we learned to use our minds differently. We adapted. We found unconventional solutions. Thane's scales rippled, a sign of irritation. This is highly irregular. So was assigning a human instructor to a Valen military academy, sir. Jessica pulled up her datapad. The war games are 3 months away. Give me that time. If my unit fails in the preliminary trials, you can disband us. But if we succeed, you'll have proven that the academy can innovate beyond traditional methods. There was a long silence. Krell could hear his own breathing, shallow and nervous. Finally, Thane's eyes all focused on Jessica at once. Very well. 3 months. But Lieutenant, when this fails, it reflects on you and your species' credibility here. Understood, sir. As they left the office, Krell's mind was racing. Lieutenant, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but the Admiral is right. How am I supposed to command warriors who can barely stand to look at me? Jessica turned to him with that same confident smile. You're not going to command traditional warriors, Krell. You're going to command specialists. People like you who've been judged by the wrong standards. She started walking toward the Academy's main database terminal. Come on. We've got a team to build. Over the next week, Jessica assembled the most unusual squad the Academy had ever seen. First was Vix, a lanky cadet with brilliant tactical analysis skills who'd washed out of flight school because severe motion sickness made him physically ill in spacecraft. The Academy had rejected him despite his perfect navigation theory scores. Then came Tara, whose anxiety disorder made her shake during live combat drills. The instructors had labeled her unreliable, a liability. But Jessica had reviewed her threat assessment reports and found something remarkable. Tara's anxiety made her hyper-aware of dangers others missed. She spotted vulnerabilities and potential attacks faster than anyone else in her class. Next was Myra, an engineering prodigy who'd been expelled from 3 different military academies. Her crime? Refusing to follow standard equipment protocols. She kept modifying regulation gear, improving it in ways that violated traditional specifications. The instructors called her reckless and insubordinate. Finally, there was Finn, who stood barely 5 feet tall even by human standards. He'd failed every physical requirement test at the academy. Too small, too weak, couldn't carry standard equipment loads. But he was agile, quick-thinking, and could fit into spaces that larger warriors couldn't even consider. When Jessica assembled them all in a private training room, the atmosphere was tense. 5 cadets who'd been dismissed, mocked, and pushed aside. They looked at each other with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. "I know what you're all thinking," Jessica began, pacing in front of them. "You're thinking this is some kind of joke. Or maybe a punishment detail. The reject squad, right?" Vix shifted uncomfortably. "That's what they're calling us in the barracks." "Good. Let them call you that." Jessica stopped pacing and looked at each of them in turn. Every single person in this room has been told they're not good enough. That they don't fit the mold of what a warrior should be. But here's what I see. I see Vix, who can calculate navigation trajectories in his head that take other cadets 3 computers and an hour to figure out. I see Tara, whose threat awareness is so sharp she identified 17 potential ambush points in last week's simulation that everyone else missed. I see Myra, whose modified shield generator prototype increased efficiency by 40%. I see Finn, whose size isn't a weakness but an advantage in reconnaissance and infiltration. And I see Krell, who has spent 3 years building the most comprehensive tactical knowledge base in this entire academy. She let that sink in for a moment. The war games start in 3 months. 16 teams will compete. Every single one of them will use traditional Valen tactics because that's all they know. Overwhelming force, rigid hierarchies, proven strategies refined over thousands of years. You know what that means. "They'll crush us in the first engagement," Finn said quietly. "Maybe," Jessica admitted. "Or maybe they'll be so focused on fighting the way they've always fought that they won't see us coming. Because we're not going to fight like Valens. We're going to fight like something new." Myra leaned forward. "What exactly does that mean, Lieutenant?" "It means we use your strengths, not hide your weaknesses. It means Vix doesn't fly ships, he plans routes. Tara doesn't suppress her anxiety, she uses it as a tactical sensor. Myra doesn't follow standard protocols, she creates better ones. Finn doesn't try to match larger warriors in strength, he goes where they can't. And Krell?" Jessica looked at him. "Krell commands from his chair, seeing the entire battlefield in his mind, making decisions that traditional commanders won't anticipate." "They'll never respect us," Tara said, her voice shaking slightly. "The other teams will laugh us out of the first trial." "Probably," Jessica agreed. "But here's something my old commander told me back on Earth. Respect isn't about standing the tallest or shouting the loudest. It's about being right when it matters most." She pulled up a holographic display showing the War Games tournament bracket. "We have 12 weeks to prove that being different isn't the same as being defective." The first training session was a complete disaster. Krell tried to give commands, but his voice was too soft. The team couldn't hear him over the simulation noise. When he raised his voice, it cracked with nervousness. Vix got motion sick within minutes of the space combat simulation. Tara had a full anxiety attack when enemy forces appeared on sensors. Myra argued with every standard tactical suggestion. Finn couldn't reach half the control panels in the command simulator. They finished dead last in the preliminary practice rankings. Other academy teams openly laughed when the scores were posted. The reject squad became the joke squad. That night, Krell sat alone in the simulation room, staring at the blank screens. His hover chair felt heavier than usual, like gravity itself was tired of holding him up. "Rough day?" Jessica's voice came from the doorway. "I can't do this, Lieutenant. You were wrong about me." She walked over and sat on the edge of a console, looking at him with those steady human eyes. "You know what the difference is between a good commander and a great one? A good commander doesn't make mistakes. A great commander learns from them faster than anyone else." She pulled up the day's simulation recordings. "Show me what went wrong. Not emotionally. Tactically." Krell took a breath and started analyzing. And as he talked through each failure, identifying specific problems and potential solutions, something shifted. His voice grew steadier. His mind clicked into gear. "Good," Jessica said when he finished. "Now you're not being the commander you think they want. You're being the commander they actually need." The War Games officially began on a cold morning with all 16 academy teams gathered in the main simulation center. The massive hall buzzed with confidence and competition. Teams from across the sector had sent their best cadets, all of them towering Valen warriors with perfect scores and flawless records. Then there was Krell's team, tucked in the corner. The betting pools had already posted their odds. 500 to 1 against them. Some bookies weren't even taking bets because it seemed like free money. The simulation parameters were brutal. 3-star systems, multiple objectives, full combat scenarios. Teams would be eliminated one by one until only the champion remained. Traditional Valen strategy was simple and effective. Establish superiority through force, maintain rigid command structure, execute proven tactical maneuvers that had won wars for centuries. Cadet Jean, commander of the Academy's primary team, stood tall near the central podium. He was everything Krell wasn't. Strong, confident, decorated with commendations. When he glanced toward Krell's team, his expression showed nothing but dismissive pity. "Cadets, take your positions," Admiral Thane's voice echoed through the hall. "The first engagement begins in 10 minutes. Krell's team moved to their simulation pod, an enclosed room with holographic displays and sensor stations. Inside, away from the staring eyes, Krell felt like he could finally breathe. His team settled into their positions. Vix at navigation, Tara at threat assessment, Myra at engineering controls, Finn at reconnaissance sensors. "Everyone ready?" Krell asked. His voice was quiet but steady now, transmitted through their private communication system. "As ready as we'll ever be," Vix muttered, already looking slightly green. The simulation activated. Their first opponent was a mid-tier team from a neighboring academy. The scenario dropped both teams into a contested asteroid field with the objective of securing a strategic mining station. The enemy team moved immediately with classic Valen tactics. They formed a tight formation, 3 ships moving as one unit toward the objective. Overwhelming force, direct approach, intimidation through strength. Krell watched them advance on the tactical display. His mind was already 3 moves ahead. "Myra, can you mask our sensor signatures? I can make us look like debris. Give me 30 seconds. Vix, I need a route through these asteroids. Something narrow, something their formation can't follow." "I've got one, but it's tight. Very tight." Vix's voice was strained, fighting his motion sickness. "Finn, I need eyes on that mining station. Are there any maintenance shafts or secondary access points?" "Scanning now. There's a waste disposal port on the lower level. It's small, maybe 2 feet in diameter." "Perfect. That's our entry point." Tara's voice cut in, shaking but urgent. "Commander, I'm detecting an ambush pattern in their formation. They're expecting us to engage head-on." "Good catch, Tara. That's exactly what we're not going to do." What happened next shocked everyone watching from the observation gallery. Instead of engaging, Krell's team seemed to vanish from sensors. The enemy team pressed forward, confused, searching for targets that had disappeared. They reached the mining station unopposed and began securing it, declaring victory. Except Finn had already infiltrated through that waste disposal port 10 minutes earlier. While the enemy celebrated outside, he systematically disabled their objective from within, corrupting the station's systems to reject their command codes. When the enemy team tried to claim their victory, the simulation rejected it. The station wasn't secured. It was compromised and useless. By the time they realized what happened, Krell's team had repositioned. Vix's impossible route through the asteroids had brought them behind enemy lines. One quick strike on the confused, out-of-position enemy ships, and the engagement was over. First victory. Against all odds. The observation gallery went quiet. Admiral Thane leaned forward in his seat, all 4 eyes focused on the tactical replay. "What just happened?" an instructor asked. Lieutenant Jessica was smiling. "They stopped trying to fight like Valens. Now they are fighting like themselves." The second engagement came 3 days later. This time against a stronger opponent, a team with actual combat decorations. The scenario was a supply convoy escort through hostile space. Again, traditional tactics said form a defensive perimeter around the convoy, fight off attackers, brute force your way through. Krell did something different. "Myra, can you make our convoy ships broadcast false cargo manifests?" "Sure, but why?" "Make it look like we're carrying weapons-grade plutonium. Dangerous, valuable, but volatile. One hit and everything explodes." Understanding dawned on Myra's face. "They'll be too scared to shoot directly at us." "Exactly. And while they're hesitating, Tara, I need you tracking their movement patterns. Find me their command ship." The engagement played out like a dance. The enemy team surrounded them, ready to strike, but hesitated when they saw the cargo readings. They tried to outmaneuver instead of attack directly. That hesitation gave Tara time to identify their commander's ship through communication patterns. Finn, using his small size, had hidden inside one of the convoy vessels. When the enemy got close, he launched from a cargo bay in a one-man pod, too small and fast for their sensors to track as a threat. He attached to their command ship's hull like a parasite. "Finn's in position," Krell said calmly. "Myra, send the override codes." Finn had planted a hacking device on the enemy command ship. Myra activated it, and suddenly the enemy commander was locked out of his own systems for exactly 8 seconds. 8 seconds of confusion, of lost coordination. That's all Krell needed. Vix, micro-jump. Now. The convoy vanished in a series of short-range jumps, something that should have been impossible while being actively engaged. But Vix had calculated it perfectly, using the enemy's own positions as cover from the gravitational interference. By the time the enemy commander regained control, the convoy was gone. Objective completed without firing a single shot. 2 victories. The odds started dropping. 400 to 1. 300 to 1. The Academy was no longer laughing. They were watching. 3rd engagement. 4th engagement. 5th engagement. Each time, Krell's team did something unexpected. They used Tara's anxiety-driven threat detection to avoid 3 ambushes that would have destroyed them. They deployed Myra's modified equipment in ways that broke conventional thinking. They sent Finn into places no normal-sized warrior could access. They let Vix plot courses through space that seemed mathematically impossible. And Krell, from his hover chair, orchestrated it all. His voice grew stronger with each victory. Not louder, but clearer. More confident. His commands came faster, sharper, always 3 steps ahead of his opponents. By the quarterfinals, something had changed in his team too. Vix stopped apologizing for his motion sickness and started taking pride in his impossible calculations. Tara's anxiety became a tactical asset she controlled rather than something that controlled her. Myra's modifications became more creative, more brilliant. Finn moved through tight spaces with the confidence of someone who knew his size was a superpower, not a weakness. They weren't rejects anymore. They were specialists. The semifinals put them against a legendary team from the core academies. Warriors who trained together for 5 years. Perfect synchronization. Overwhelming firepower. The betting odds had stabilized at 50 to 1. Better than before, but still massive underdogs. The scenario was brutal. Defend a fortified position against superior numbers. Every team that had faced this scenario used the same strategy. Dig in, hold the line, make the enemy pay for every inch of ground. Krell stared at the tactical display for a long moment. Then he said something that made his entire team freeze. "We're abandoning the fortress." "What?" Vix turned in his seat. "Commander, the objective is to defend it." "No," Krell said, and his voice was absolutely certain now. "The objective is to prevent the enemy from taking it." "That's not the same thing." Jessica, watching from the observation deck, grinned. Now he gets it. What happened next would be studied in tactical academies for years to come. But in that moment, as Krell's team prepared to do the impossible, no one knew if it would be remembered as brilliant or insane. The final battle was about to begin. The observation gallery was packed. Word had spread through the entire academy that something unprecedented was happening. Cadets who'd mocked Krell's team now crowded around viewing screens. Instructors who'd dismissed them as failures stood with arms crossed, watching intently. Even cadets from other academies had logged in remotely to witness what everyone was calling either genius or madness. Admiral Thane sat in the center of the gallery, all 4 eyes fixed on the main display. Lieutenant Jessica stood nearby, arms folded, face unreadable. On the screen, the simulation showed a heavily fortified outpost on a barren moon. Krell's team had 12 defensive turrets, shield generators, supply depots, and natural geographical advantages. The enemy team, the legendary Core Academy warriors, approached with 3 times their numbers and superior firepower. "He's going to throw away every advantage he has," an instructor muttered. "The boy has lost his mind." Inside the simulation pod, Krell's voice was calm and measured. "Tara, status on enemy approach." "They're forming a standard siege formation. 3 waves. First wave will test our defenses, second wave will exploit weaknesses, third wave will overwhelm. Textbook assault strategy." Her voice still shook slightly, but there was confidence underneath now. Estimated time to first engagement, 8 minutes. "Good. That gives us time. Finn, I need you to plant Myra's devices at every major system junction in this fortress. Power core, shield generators, communications array, all of it. On it, Commander. Finn was already moving through the simulation, his small avatar darting through maintenance tunnels and access shafts. Myra, walk him through the placement. I need them to look like standard maintenance nodes, nothing suspicious.
Got it.
Finn, first one goes behind the power core cooling system. There's a magnetic clamp point at coordinates. Vix turned from his navigation console, his face pale but focused. Commander, you're really doing this? We're really abandoning the fortress. We're not abandoning anything, Vix. We're changing the definition of victory. Krell pulled up a star chart. I need evacuation routes plotted. Multiple vectors, random trajectories, impossible for them to track all at once. That's going to be dozens of calculations while under fire. You've done harder. Remember the asteroid field run? Vix managed a weak smile. That was terrifying. And brilliant. Do it again. The enemy team advanced, confident and powerful. Their commander, a decorated warrior named Vex, had won the last 3 war games. His tactics were studied in classrooms across the galaxy. Efficient, brutal, effective. Inside his own simulation pod, Vex studied the fortress ahead. Standard defensive setup. They're going to make us work for it, but we have the numbers. First wave, prepare to engage. Sir, one of his team members said. Should we be cautious? This team has been unconventional. Unconventional doesn't matter when you're outnumbered 3-1, Vex replied. They have nowhere to run. This fortress is their only strategic position on this moon. They'll fight to hold it because they have to. He was wrong. 7 minutes into the battle, just as Vex's first wave approached weapons range, every civilian in the fortress began evacuating. Transport ships, hidden in underground hangars, launched in a dozen different directions. Not military vessels, civilian transports, scattered across the system like seeds in the wind. Sir, they are running, one of Vex's team reported. The entire civilian population is evacuating. Vex frowned. Ignore them. Focus on the fortress. Without the civilians, it's just an empty structure. We take it, we win. His team poured into the assault. The first wave hit the fortress defenses hard. Turrets fired back, shields held, everything seemed normal. The defenders were putting up a fight, just as expected. The fortress fell within 20 minutes. Vex's overwhelming force was simply too much. They breached the shields, destroyed the turrets, and secured every major system. The enemy team had retreated to their ships and jumped away, abandoning their position completely. Victory. Clear and total. Vex stood in his command pod, satisfied. Objective secured. The fortress is ours. That's when things started going wrong. The fortress power core began fluctuating. Not dangerously, but enough to be concerning. Then the shield generators started cycling randomly. The communications array began broadcasting interference. The water purification systems shut down. The air recyclers went offline. What's happening? Vex demanded. Engineering, report. Sir, we're detecting cascading system failures. It's like the entire infrastructure is collapsing. Fix it. We need this fortress operational. But they couldn't fix it. Finn's carefully placed devices, hidden during the evacuation, were systematically corrupting every system. Not destroying them, that would have been obvious sabotage. Instead, they were degrading them, making the fortress technically intact but completely uninhabitable and tactically worthless. Meanwhile, Vix was executing the most complex navigation sequence of his life. 12 civilian transports, each broadcasting slightly different engine signatures, each taking randomized courses through the system. The enemy couldn't possibly track them all, couldn't possibly intercept them all. Tara, status on enemy pursuit. Krell asked. They're trying to track the transports, but they're still committed to holding the fortress. Vex hasn't realized yet. Her voice was steady now, reading the tactical situation with frightening accuracy. Wait, he's trying to split his forces. 3 ships breaking off to pursue. Which transports are they targeting? Vectors 7, 12, and 3. Good. Those are the decoys. Myra, activate their false cargo signals. The 3 transports the enemy was chasing suddenly began broadcasting emergency distress signals. Their cargo bays appeared to be full of unstable reactor cores, ready to explode if damaged. Any attack would trigger a catastrophic detonation. The pursuing ships hesitated. They couldn't destroy the transports without risking massive casualties and mission failure. But they couldn't let them escape either. That hesitation cost them everything. Vex is pulling back to the fortress, Tara reported. He's trying to consolidate. He thinks he can still win by holding the objective. Let him think that, Krell said. How long until the fortress is completely non-functional? Myra's countdown shows 3 minutes, Finn replied. He'd successfully infiltrated back to their own ships during the chaos. In the observation gallery, instructors were standing now. Admiral Thane had risen from his seat, all 4 eyes locked on the tactical display. He's poisoned the ground, someone whispered. The fortress is worthless. And the civilians are escaping, another added. All of them. But what about Vex's command structure? They're still coordinated, still powerful. Jessica's smile widened. Watch. Inside Vex's command ship, systems began acting strangely. Communications had a half-second delay. Sensor readings flickered. Nothing critical, just small glitches. Engineering, what's causing these anomalies? Sir, we're detecting a foreign intrusion device somewhere in our hull. It must have attached during the fortress assault. Finn's gift from 3 engagements ago, still hiding in a ventilation shaft, still sending interference. He'd planted it during the chaos of the fortress battle, his small size allowing him to get close enough to Vex's command ship during the confusion. The glitches lasted only 8 seconds. But 8 seconds of coordination loss when commanding 36 ships across multiple objectives was catastrophic. Now, Vix, Krell commanded. Microjumps, all transports. Scatter pattern Omega. The civilian transports vanished from sensors, each executing short-range jumps that Vix had pre-calculated. By the time Vex's team regained full coordination, the transports were gone, scattered across the system in positions impossible to predict or intercept. The simulation timer continued counting down. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. Time expired. Final assessment began calculating. The fortress was secured by Vex's team, technically. But it was uninhabitable and strategically useless. The civilians, the actual objective, had escaped successfully. 0 casualties. Mission parameters stated clearly that the objective was to prevent civilian capture, not to hold specific territory. The results flashed on every screen in the observation gallery. Objective achieved, Krell's team. Civilian population preserved, 100%. Strategic victory, unconventional tactics. Silence filled the gallery. Then Admiral Thane began what could only be described as a slow, deliberate clap. Other instructors joined. Then cadets. Within moments, the entire gallery was acknowledging what they'd just witnessed. Something completely new. Vex stood in his simulation pod, staring at the defeat notification in disbelief. His perfect record, broken by a commander who couldn't even walk. Krell's team sat in their pod, exhausted and stunned. They'd done it. They'd actually done it. Commander, Finn's voice was soft. We're in the finals. Krell looked at his team, these specialists who'd been called rejects and failures. No, he said quietly. We're already winners. The finals are just proving it to everyone else. The final match was scheduled for 3 days later, giving both teams time to prepare and recover. But those 3 days felt like 3 years for Krell. The entire academy had transformed around him. Cadets who'd never looked at him before now stopped to watch him pass. Some nodded respectfully. Others whispered to their friends, pointing at the hover chair that had once been invisible. The cafeteria was the strangest experience. For 3 years, Krell had eaten alone at a corner table. Now, when he entered the hall, conversations stopped. Eyes followed him. A group of second-year cadets actually stood up and offered him their table. This is weird, Finn muttered beside him. Like, really weird. They finally see us, Tara said softly. After all this time, they actually see us. But not everyone was celebrating. Cadet John, commander of the Academy's primary team and Krell's opponent in the finals, stood near the far wall with his crew. His expression was cold, professional, but his scales had darkened slightly. A valid sign of displeasure. He's angry, Vix observed. Can't blame him. He was supposed to be the hero of this story. Myra shook her head. No. He's scared. We broke all his rules, and now he doesn't know how to fight us. The finals would be the ultimate test. The scenario was simple but brutal, total fleet engagement. 2 equal forces, no tricks, no special conditions. Just pure tactical command in open space. It was designed to be the ultimate test of leadership, strategy, and execution. Lieutenant Jessica found Krell that evening in the simulation room. He was reviewing recordings of Jean's previous matches, studying patterns and tendencies. "You're overthinking it," she said, pulling up a chair next to his hover chair. "Jean has never lost a simulation. His tactics are flawless. His team moves like a single organism. How do we beat perfection?" Jessica smiled. "By understanding that perfection is predictable. Jean follows the rules perfectly because the rules have always worked for him. But you? You've spent your whole life finding ways around rules that weren't built for you." She gestured at the screen. "Don't fight his battle. Fight yours. What if we lose? Then you lose. But you'll lose as a commander, leading a team that respects you. That's already more than you had 3 months ago." She stood up. "Get some rest, Krell. Tomorrow, you show them what real leadership looks like." The morning of the finals, the main simulation center was packed beyond capacity. Cadets from every academy in the sector had gathered. News feeds from 3 planets were broadcasting live. Even some Galactic Fleet officers had shown up to observe. The attention was overwhelming. Admiral Thane stood at the central podium, his massive frame commanding instant silence. "Today's match will determine not just the War Games champion, but potentially the future of tactical doctrine in the Valen military. We have 2 commanders representing 2 different philosophies. Cadet Jean embodies our traditions, our proven methods, our strength. Cadet Krell represents innovation, adaptation, and unconventional thinking." He paused, looking at both teams. "May the better commander win." The simulation pod sealed. Inside, Krell's hands hovered over the tactical controls. His team was quiet, focused, ready. "All ships check in," Krell said softly. "Navigation ready," Vix replied. "Threat assessment online," Tara added. "Engineering systems modified and ready," Myra confirmed. "Reconnaissance positioned," Finn finished. Krell took a deep breath. The simulation activated, and suddenly they were commanding a fleet of 20 ships against Jean's identical force. Open space, nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Jean's strategy was immediate and aggressive. He formed his fleet into a perfect combat formation, a wall of ships that moved with mechanical precision. It was beautiful in its efficiency, intimidating in its power. Every ship knew its role, every movement was coordinated. "He's going to try to overpower us directly," Tara observed. "Classic overwhelming force doctrine." "Then we don't meet him head-on," Krell said. He'd spent 3 days thinking about this moment, and suddenly the answer was clear. "We don't fight like a fleet. We fight like a swarm." What happened next defied every tactical manual in the Valen military library. Instead of forming a unified battle line, Krell split his fleet into 5 independent groups. Not random groups, but carefully designed units that played to each ship's strengths. Vix's navigation group moved in impossible patterns, weaving through space in ways that seemed chaotic but were actually precisely calculated to create sensor confusion. Tara's threat assessment group stayed at maximum range, using their sensors to predict Jean's movements before they happened. Myra's engineering group had modified their ship's power signatures to make 3 ships look like 5, creating phantom targets. And Finn's reconnaissance group, flying the smallest, fastest ships in the fleet, darted through gaps in Jean's formation, gathering intelligence and creating distractions. "What is he doing?" an instructor asked in the observation gallery. "His formation is broken. They're all over the place." "That's not broken," Jessica said quietly. "That's coordinated chaos. Watch." Jean tried to engage, but every time his perfect formation moved to attack one group, 2 others would strike from unexpected angles. His unified strength became a liability. He couldn't split his formation without losing coordination, but he couldn't catch the scattered enemy groups while staying together. "Commander, they're everywhere," one of Jean's team members reported, frustration clear in his voice. "We engage one target, 3 more appear behind us." "Maintain formation," Jean ordered. "They can't sustain this. Eventually, they'll make a mistake." But the mistake never came. Krell's team had been making mistakes for 3 months, learning from each one, adapting. They'd become comfortable with chaos because chaos was all they'd ever known. 30 minutes into the engagement, Jean's fleet had taken minimal losses, but they'd accomplished nothing. They were exhausted from chasing phantoms, frustrated by enemies who refused to fight by the rules. Krell saw his moment. "All groups, converge on Point Delta. Myra, I need everything you've got in the next 10 seconds. Commander, if I push the modifications that hard, half our ships will show temporary power failures. I know. Do it anyway. Myra executed, and suddenly half of Krell's fleet appeared to lose power. Dead in space, vulnerable, perfect targets. Jean saw the opening immediately. All ships, focus fire on the disabled vessels. We end this now. His entire fleet turned as one, a perfectly coordinated movement toward what appeared to be an easy victory. Every ship committed, every weapon charged, the full might of his force concentrated on a single objective. Now, Vix, Krell said calmly. Microjump. Point echo. The disabled ships vanished, executing short-range jumps that shouldn't have been possible for damaged vessels. They appeared behind Jean's fleet, which was now completely out of position, all their weapons pointed at empty space. Finn, light them up. The reconnaissance ships, hidden in the confusion, had attached targeting markers to Jean's command ships during the chaos. Every critical vessel was now painted for precision strikes. All ships, fire. It wasn't overwhelming force. It wasn't superior numbers. It was surgical precision, hitting exactly the right targets at exactly the right moment when the enemy had no way to respond. Jean's fleet didn't explode dramatically. It simply lost coordination. Without their command ships, the perfect formation fell apart. Ships tried to reform, but without leadership, without the unified strategy they'd relied on, they were just individual vessels making independent decisions. Krell's swarm, already comfortable with chaos, easily picked them apart. The simulation ended. Final assessment flashed across every screen. Victory, Krell's team. Tactical superiority, adaptive command doctrine. Recommendation, further study advised. The observation gallery erupted. Not just applause, but genuine shock and excitement. Admiral Thane stood slowly, all four eyes wide with something that might have been disbelief or might have been wonder. Inside the simulation pod, Krell's team sat in stunned silence. We won, Finn whispered. We actually won. No, Myra said, tears forming in her eyes. We did more than win. We changed the game. The pod doors opened. Outside, the academy waited. Krell's hover chair moved forward slowly, his team following behind. The hall was silent as they emerged. Admiral Thane approached. For a long moment, he simply looked at Krell. Then, slowly, deliberately, the massive Valen warrior lowered himself into a full bow. A gesture of respect given only to commanders of equal or superior rank. I have commanded warriors for 40 years, Thane said, his voice carrying through the hall. I have studied tactics for longer than you have been alive. Today, a cadet I dismissed as broken taught me that I have been looking at warfare through too narrow a lens. He straightened. Cadet Krell, upon your graduation, you will be offered a position developing new tactical doctrine for the Valen military. But Jessica stepped forward before Krell could respond. Actually, Admiral, the Galactic Fleet has already made an offer. She looked at Krell. They are forming a new division. Special tactics and asymmetric warfare. They want commanders who see possibilities instead of limitations. They want someone who can lead teams that don't fit traditional molds. She smiled. They want you as their first captain. Krell looked at his team. Vix, who could navigate impossible routes. Tara, whose anxiety had become a tactical superpower. Myra, whose creativity broke every rule. Finn, whose size was an advantage, not a weakness. His team. His friends. Will they come with me? Krell asked. They are counting on it, Jessica replied. Turns out the galaxy has a lot of specialists who've been judged by the wrong standards. Someone needs to lead them. Krell's hover chair rose slightly, bringing him to eye level with Jessica. Then yes, Commander. I accept. 3 years later, Captain Krell commanded the GSS Unconventional, a ship designed for missions that conventional forces couldn't handle. His crew was exactly what you'd expect. Specialists, misfits, people who thought differently. They took assignments that seemed impossible and made them routine. The Valen Military Academy had changed too. A new track had been added, Tactical Command Specialist. Physical requirements were optional. Mental acuity was mandatory. Cadets who couldn't march could become officers, judged on their minds and leadership rather than their bodies. In simulation rooms across the galaxy, instructors taught a new doctrine alongside the old traditional methods. They called it adaptive tactics, or asymmetric warfare, but the cadets had a simpler name for it. Think like Krell. Jessica kept one item on her desk in her new office as Admiral of Training Command. A small model of a hover chair with an inscription that read, "For the commander who taught me I was never broken, just waiting for someone to see my strength." And in quiet moments, when young cadets asked Krell how he went from being invisible to being legendary, he always gave the same answer. "I didn't change. The galaxy just finally learned to look at me differently." And it all started with one human who refused to accept that different meant defective. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't advanced technology or superior weapons. It was simpler and more profound. They taught the universe that strength comes in infinite forms, and that the warriors you dismiss might be the ones who change everything. Sometimes the greatest leaders aren't the ones who stand tallest. They're the ones who see furthest, who think deepest, who understand that there's no single right way to win. They're the commanders who turn rejects into legends. They're the ones who prove that being different isn't a weakness. It's the ultimate advantage.